Imagine a world where the moonlight falls on landscapes untouched by any city, any road, or even the sound of a human voice. The wind moves through towering grasslands, the cries of strange birds echo in the distance, and the air carries scents unknown to our modern noses. Rich soil, wild flowers, and the musk of creatures long extinct. This is not the Earth you know. This is our planet millions of years ago, a stage where the first faint whispers of humanity are yet to be spoken. Somewhere in the canopy of an ancient forest, a small primate clings to a branch. Her hands, surprisingly human-like, grip the bark with precision. Her eyes, forward-facing, scan for danger and opportunity. She is not human, but in her a spark has begun. This creature, perhaps an ancestor from the genus Australopithecus, does not know it, but she stands at the very beginning of a story that will lead, one day, to us. We like to think of history as starting with cities, kings, and wars, but our story is far older. It begins not in stone temples or underwritten law, but in forests and plains, with creatures slowly learning to walk, to think, and to change. And what makes it even more astonishing is this: each of us carries in our very bodies the map of that journey. Your spine, your hands, your eyes, even the way you dream, all shaped by this long passage through deep time. Let's journey back, far back, to where it all began. Not thousands, not even hundreds of thousands of years ago, but tens of millions of years in the past, when our ancestors were still tree-dwellers in a dangerous, untamed world. The forests of the Miocene epoch stretch endlessly. It is warm, humid, and bursting with life. Vines twist like serpents, leaves glisten with dew, and insects sing their endless chorus. In the treetops, small, agile primates leap from branch to branch, their long limbs and grasping toes perfect for life high above the ground. They are safe here. Safer than on the forest floor, where ancient predators wait. But safety is never guaranteed. A shadow moves in the undergrowth, the powerful form of a prehistoric cat. The primates know its presence not by sight, but by the sudden silence of birds. Survival is a daily game of decisions: where to feed, where to sleep, when to risk the open ground. In this game, those who can think faster, move smarter, and learn from mistakes survive. This is the quiet engine of evolution, a force that shapes bodies and minds without any plan, yet with relentless precision. Over countless generations, small changes build. Some primates develop better depth perception, allowing them to leap more accurately. Others grow slightly larger brains, giving them a moment's advantage when faced with danger. These changes are passed down, refined, and tested again by the challenges of life. Then one day, though no creature at the time would have noticed, a shift begins. Some primates venture more often to the forest floor. Perhaps the fruits in the trees have grown scarce. Perhaps predators above have forced them down. Whatever the reason, the ground offers new possibilities. Fallen fruit, roots, insects, and eventually the carcasses left by other hunters. But it also demands a different way of moving, of thinking, of surviving. And here, on this uncertain ground, the first faint footsteps of humanity are made. Not yet upright, not yet human, but different, in ways that will matter. In this moment, the long road toward walking on two legs, toward shaping the world with our hands, toward becoming Homo sapiens, has begun. The sun hangs low over the African savanna, painting the tall grasses gold. Heat shimmers in the air, and herds of ancient antelope move cautiously between sparse acacia trees. The smell of dry earth mixes with the sharp scent of distant rain. Somewhere, vultures circle in the sky, a signal of death and opportunity. A small figure moves through the grass, her silhouette strange. She does not run like a leopard or leap like a gazelle. Instead, she walks, on two legs. Her stride is awkward but steady, her dark eyes scanning the horizon for danger. This is Australopithecus afarensis, one of the earliest species to walk upright. She's barely over a meter tall, with long arms that still betray her tree-climbing past, but her legs carry her forward in a way no ape before her had mastered. Walking on two legs is not a simple trick of balance, it is a revolution. It frees her hands to carry food, to cradle her young, to grasp stones that might one day be shaped into tools. It allows her to see over the grass, to spot danger early. It means she can travel farther under the burning sun without exhausting herself, but it also leaves her vulnerable, slower than predators, exposed in the open. Every step she takes is a gamble between opportunity and death. The path to bipedalism was not sudden. For millions of years, some ancestors moved partly on two legs, partly on four. It was the changing climate, forests thinning into grasslands, that tipped the balance. On the open plains, the ability to walk upright meant survival. Those who could endure long journeys in search of food, who could stand tall and scan for danger, lived to pass on their genes. Our Australopithecus female stops near a patch of low shrubs. She kneels, using her hands to pluck berries, occasionally glancing up at the sky where vultures still circle. Her child clings to her side, curious and watchful. A sudden rustle in the grass freezes her. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then, with a burst of speed, a saber-toothed cat explodes into view. She turns, scoops up her child and runs, not on all fours but upright, her arms gripping her precious cargo. They reach the safety of a thorny thicket. Her chest heaves as she listens to the frustrated growl of the predator fading into the distance. This time, they survive. In moments like these, the value of upright walking becomes clear. It is not about speed. She cannot outrun the great cats. It is about endurance, awareness, and the freedom to carry what matters most. This adaptation will ripple through time, shaping every step that follows. Fossils of Australopithecus tell us she lived between 4 and 2 million years ago, in regions that now span Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. She had a brain only slightly larger than that of a chimpanzee, but her life demanded cunning. She knew which plants to eat, which animals to avoid, and how to read the shifting moods of the savannah. Her society was small, a tight-knit group of relatives who shared food and protection. In their unity lay their strength. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the Australopithecus clan gathers. They huddle together against the cooling air, the youngest nestled in the center. The adults watch the shadows for movement, their ears tuned to the distant calls of hyenas. Above them, the first stars appear, the same stars we see today. They do not know it, but each twinkling light will one day be named by their distant descendants. For now, they simply survive. Step by step, generation after generation, they are laying the foundations of what it means to be human. The savannah has changed again. Rivers carve winding paths through the land, and the dry grass is broken by rocky outcrops where shade offers brief relief from the punishing sun. Herds of ancient elephants move slowly in the distance, their tusks long and curved, their calls rumbling through the warm air. This is still a dangerous place. Lions, leopards, and packs of hyenas rule the food chain, but here walks a new kind of creature, one that will bend the rules. He is small, no taller than the shoulder of a modern teenager, but his eyes hold something different, a steady, measuring gaze. In his hands, he grips a piece of stone, chipped, shaped, sharpened. This is Homo habilis. The tool in his grasp is not an accident of nature. It has been crafted with intent. For the first time in the long journey of evolution, an ancestor has begun to alter the world to fit his needs. The sharpened rock can crack open bones to reach the rich marrow within, slice meat from carcasses left by other predators, and dig for edible roots. Each use is a small victory, a widening of the survival margin. Toolmaking is not just about strength, it is about foresight. Before Homo habilis, survival was a game of reacting to the present. Now, there is planning. The creature chips the stone not because he needs it in this exact moment, but because he will need it later. In that act, thinking ahead, lies the seed of human civilization. By the fireless light of day, the small group of Homo habilis moves along the riverbank. They are scavengers and opportunists, following the movements of larger predators. When lions bring down an antelope, the group waits at a distance, watching as the big cats feed. When the predators have had their fill and leave the stripped carcass, the toolmakers move in. Stone flakes in hand, they work quickly, slicing away scraps of meat and breaking open bones to reach the soft marrow inside. The sound of stone striking bone echoes in the air. Every bite of nutrient-rich food fuels a growing brain. This is no coincidence. Over generations, the access to high-energy animal protein allows brain size to increase. The creature's hands become more skillful, his thoughts more complex. His memory sharpens, not just recalling where the river bends or which plants heal a wound, but remembering how to make the tools themselves. The knowledge spreads within the group. A young one watches as an elder strikes one stone against another, learning by imitation. There are no words yet, no spoken instructions, but the transfer of skill is unmistakable. The rhythm of stone on stone becomes the heartbeat of progress. As evening falls, the group gathers in a shallow shelter of overhanging rock. The air cools, and the sounds of the night, insects, distant howls, rise. They huddle together, their tools within reach, their eyes alert. In the flicker of moonlight, the shapes of these early humans seem almost familiar. Their lives are still short, their struggles endless, but they are no longer just another animal in the food chain. They have begun to change the rules. In the days ahead, they will roam farther, craft more tools, and teach more hands to shape stone. Slowly, the spark of human ingenuity will grow brighter, lighting a path that will stretch far beyond the savannah into every corner of the earth. The air over the savannah is heavy with the smell of rain, though the clouds hang far to the west. Tall grass sways under a warm wind, and the shadows of massive elephants stretch long in the late afternoon sun. But here, moving steadily and purposefully across the land, comes a figure unlike any the world has seen before. Taller, stronger, and straighter than his predecessors, this is Homo erectus, upright man. He walks with long, confident strides, his back straight, his arms swinging in rhythm. His body is built for endurance, not for bursts of speed, but for journeys that can last for hours, even days. He can travel farther than almost any predator, tracking prey until exhaustion overtakes them. With a brain nearly twice the size of Australopithecus and significantly larger than Homo habilis, Homo erectus sees the world in more complex patterns. He understands that waterholes are not just places to drink, but gathering points for animals, both predator and prey. He knows the seasons will bring migration, that certain plants appear only after rains. His life is still a fight for survival, but now there is a strategy behind each move. In his hand, he carries a spear, still primitive, just a sharpened stick hardened in the fire, and that fire, that is his greatest inheritance. No one knows exactly when or how the first flames were tamed. Perhaps it began with a lightning strike igniting a tree. Our ancestors may have approached cautiously, fascinated by the heat, the glow, the way the light danced against the dark. Over time, they learned to carry burning branches from place to place, keeping the flames alive, feeding them with dry grass and wood. Fire changed everything. It brought warmth during cold nights, keeping the deadly chill at bay. It drove away predators, its crackling and light a warning no animal dared ignore. It made food safer, softer, and richer in nutrients, allowing more energy to fuel the growing human brain. Around the fire, Homo erectus could sit through the night, awake and alert in a way no other creature could. And fire did something else, something less tangible but just as important. It created a center, a place to gather. The group no longer had to scatter after dark to find safety in trees or caves. They could stay together, protected by the flames. In this circle of light, the bonds of community deepened. Imagine the scene. A group of Homo erectus huddled close, the firelight dancing on their faces. Some rest after the day's hunt, others chew on roasted meat, the scent rising into the cool night air. In the flicker of orange and shadow, a child watches an elder, eyes wide with curiosity as a story is acted out with gestures and sounds. There is no spoken language yet, but there is communication. Shared meaning carried in tone, expression, and movement. By day, Homo erectus roams farther than any ancestor, before spreading out of Africa into Asia and Europe. They cross rivers, climb hills, and adapt to forests, grasslands, even the edges of deserts. They are explorers in the truest sense, not by choice, but by necessity. Their survival depends on finding new lands, new resources, and new opportunities. And so, with fire as their companion, they push into the unknown. Each journey leaves footprints in the soil, each migration a step closer to the global spread of humanity. When the wind blows across the embers at night, sending a burst of sparks into the dark sky, perhaps some part of Homo erectus feels what we still feel today when we stare into flames. The quiet certainty that here, in the light and warmth, we are safe. And we belong. The wind howls across a frozen valley, lifting swirls of snow that sting the skin like needles. The sky is heavy, pale, and endless, and the land beneath is locked in ice. Herds of woolly mammoths move slowly through the whiteness, their shaggy coats rippling in the wind, their tusks curling like ancient ivory blades. This is Europe during the last ice age, a place where winter never truly ends, and survival demands strength, skill, and a fierce will. In a rocky shelter at the edge of a cliff, a small group gathers around a glowing fire. Their faces are broad, their brow ridges heavy, their bodies thick and powerful, built for endurance in the cold. These are the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, our evolutionary cousins. Neanderthals are no primitive brutes despite the myths. They are master toolmakers, hunters, and survivors. Their hands, strong yet skillful, shape flint into blades with remarkable precision. Their spears are balanced for throwing or thrusting, their scraping tools perfect for cleaning hides and carving wood. Each tool is born of knowledge passed down through countless generations. The hunt is the heart of Neanderthal life. Out in the frozen plains, a group moves in silence, their breath clouding the air. They spread in a crescent formation, surrounding a young reindeer. At the right moment, a spear flies, striking true. The animal falls, and the hunters close in quickly, finishing the kill. Every part of the creature will be used: meat for food, bones for tools, sinew for binding, hide for clothing. Nothing is wasted. In this environment, waste is death. Neanderthals are deeply social. Their communities are tight-knit, bound by cooperation and care. Fossil evidence shows they nursed their sick, protected their injured, and buried their dead, sometimes with flowers or carefully placed objects. This suggests not only empathy, but a sense of ritual, perhaps even belief in something beyond death. Inside their shelters, the fire burns bright, and the smell of roasting meat fills the air. Thick hides block the wind, and children play at the edge of the warmth, watching the adults work. One elder carefully shapes a blade, while another sits quietly, eyes closed, humming a low rhythmic sound. Whether it is a song, a form of communication, or simply comfort, no one can say. But it feels human. Yet the world is changing. Across distant lands, another species is rising, Homo sapiens. Tall, slender, and endlessly inventive, these new humans are spreading out of Africa, moving into territories the Neanderthals have called home for hundreds of thousands of years. For a time, the two species will share the land, even interbreed, but slowly, inevitably, the balance will shift. Climate will tighten its grip, resources will dwindle, and the newcomers will bring competition unlike anything the Neanderthals have faced before. Within a few thousand years, their numbers will fall, their voices will fade. One night, as snow drifts against the shelter walls, a Neanderthal mother watches her child sleeping in the firelight. She cannot know that their kind is nearing the end of its story, that their legacy will live on only in fragments of DNA carried by future humans. All she knows is that here and now they have survived another day. And in that she is as human as we are. The African sun blazes over a vast plain, where rivers glisten like silver threads against the green and gold of the land. Herds of gazelle move gracefully through the grass, while birds wheel in the blue sky above. Amid this beauty, something extraordinary is happening. A new kind of human has appeared. They are like the Neanderthals in many ways, strong, intelligent, skilled hunters, but there are differences that will change the course of history. Their bodies are lighter and more slender, built for long-distance travel. Their faces are smaller, their foreheads higher, their chins more defined. And inside their skulls lies a brain wired for something entirely new. Symbolic thought. These are Homo sapiens, modern humans, and with them the story of humanity enters a new chapter. Where earlier humans saw only the practical, Homo sapiens begins to see the possible. A spear is not just a stick with a sharpened point. It can be designed for balance, weight, and distance. A stone blade can be refined into a knife, an arrowhead, a harpoon. But the real revolution comes not in tools, but in language. At first, communication is still bound to gestures, sounds, and expressions, but now words begin to form. Simple at first, then more complex. A spoken language allows the sharing of ideas that cannot be shown directly. Plans for the future, stories from the past, warnings about dangers not yet seen. It allows teaching that is richer and more precise. Knowledge no longer has to die with its holder. It can be passed down, generation after generation, across vast distances and countless years. The landscape of the mind changes too. Homo sapiens begins to imagine things that do not yet exist, and some that never will. The first sparks of creativity appear in beads carved from shells, in ochre-stained stones, in lines drawn on cave walls. The earliest art may be simple marks, but they hold meaning for identity, for beauty, perhaps even for belief. Picture a cave deep in the heart of what is now France, tens of thousands of years ago. By the light of a small fire, a human kneels before the rock, dipping fingers into a mixture of pigment and animal fat. With slow, deliberate strokes, they paint the curve of a bison's horn, the strength of its shoulders, the power in its legs. Around them, other figures emerge, horses, lions, mammoths, the world of the hunt captured in color and form. These are not decorations. They are windows into the mind of a people who could imagine beyond the here and now. With creativity comes adaptability. As Homo sapiens spreads out of Africa, they learn to thrive in every environment they encounter. In deserts, they dig for hidden water. In icy lands, they stitch furs into warm clothing. On coasts, they fish with hooks and nets. No longer limited to a single habitat, they become a species without borders. But this new power comes with a shadow. As they grow in number and skill, Homo sapiens begins to dominate the landscapes they enter. Large animals that have roamed the earth for millennia start to vanish. Forests are cut, grasslands burned, rivers fished dry. The first steps toward reshaping the planet have begun. Still, in this moment, before the rise of cities and empires, humanity is young and full of wonder. At night, under a sky ablaze with stars, a small group gathers around the fire. A storyteller speaks, their words carrying images into the minds of the listeners, tales of the hunt, of spirits, of ancestors long gone. The children listen wide-eyed, the elders smile faintly, and the flames cast shadows that dance like the creatures painted in the caves. Here, in the warmth of the fire and the rhythm of the voice, humanity finds its true gift, the ability to share not just food and shelter, but meaning. And that, more than any spear or shelter, will be the key to surviving and shaping the future. The river bends gently through a fertile valley, its waters glinting under the early morning sun. Along its banks, reeds sway and birds call to one another across the shimmering air. In the distance, figures move slowly, bending and straightening, their hands busy with something the world has never truly seen before, the deliberate planting of seeds. This is the beginning of the agricultural revolution, a turning point that will forever change the rhythm of human life. For countless generations, humans have been hunters and gatherers, following the migrations of animals and the seasonal ripening of plants. Now they are learning to stay in one place, to cultivate the land, to coax food from the soil. Wheat, barley, lentils, these crops will become the backbone of survival. At first, farming is small-scale, an experiment born of necessity. A dropped seed sprouts where camp was once made. People notice. The next season, they drop seeds on purpose. Over time, they clear patches of land, dig irrigation channels, and store surplus grain. With farming comes a steady food supply, and with stability comes population growth. The change is profound. Villages begin to rise along rivers and fertile plains. Simple huts of mud and reeds cluster together, surrounded by fields. Children play in the dusty lanes, elders sit in the shade, and smoke curls from cooking fires into the evening sky. No longer forced to move constantly, humans begin to gather objects, tools, pottery, ornaments, possessions that would have been burdens on the move, but now find a place in permanent homes. Farming also brings a new relationship with animals. Goats, sheep, and cattle are tamed, not just hunted. They provide milk, wool, hides, and labor, becoming part of the human world in a way no wild creature has before. Around the edges of the village, dogs, once wolves, keep watch, their loyalty bound by generations of shared survival. But the shift to farming is not without cost. The diet narrows compared to the variety of wild plants and animals once eaten. Close living quarters make disease easier to spread. Disputes over land and water begin to rise. And with the ability to store surplus food comes the first hints of inequality. Some will have more, others less. Still, the benefits are undeniable. Farming frees time for pursuits beyond survival. People carve figurines, weave cloth, shape clay into jars and bowls. Around communal fires, stories grow longer, more complex, perhaps now even preserved in symbols etched into bone or clay. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the hills, the valley glows gold. The river flows quietly, carrying reflections of the sky. In the village, the day's work is done. A mother kneads grain into dough. A father checks the fencing around the goats. Children chase one another between the huts. The air is filled with the smell of baking bread, a scent that will carry across thousands of years into kitchens we know today. This moment marks more than just survival. It is the beginning of shaping the world to human design. The fields will grow larger, the villages more crowded. In time, villages will become towns and towns will become cities. And with cities will come something new, written language, organized religion, trade, law, and the rise of complex societies. The long journey from the first upright steps to the towering walls of civilization is nearly complete. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of the river. It winds like a living vein through the land, carrying not just water, but life itself. Along its banks, people build walls of sun-baked brick, rising in lines and angles against the horizon. This is no scattered village. This is a city, the first of its kind. In the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what will one day be called Mesopotamia, humanity takes its next great leap. Fields stretch beyond the city walls, green with barley and wheat. Irrigation channels snake across the land, feeding the crops. Inside the walls, narrow streets twist between houses, workshops and marketplaces where traders call out their wares. Clay jars of oil and grain are stacked neatly. Bolts of cloth hang in the sun, and the smell of roasting meat drifts through the air. But here, survival is no longer the only goal. This is a place of organization, of hierarchy, of specialization. Some tend the fields, others shape clay into pots, weave baskets, or forge copper into tools and ornaments. A ruling class emerges. Kings, priests and scribes, overseeing the flow of resources, the building of temples, the keeping of records. And here, in this cradle of civilization, writing is born. At first, it is simple, marks pressed into wet clay with a reed stylus, tracking the movement of grain or the number of sheep. But over time, these marks evolve into a full system of communication. Cuneiform. Words that can be recorded, read and remembered across generations. Memory is no longer bound to human minds. It can live in clay and stone. Alongside writing comes monumental architecture. Temples rise, ziggurats that stretch toward the sky, their terraced steps climbing like man-made mountains. Priests ascend these heights to offer sacrifices to the gods, seeking their favor for rain, harvest, and protection. Religion becomes an organizing force, uniting people in shared rituals, stories, and beliefs. This transformation is not unique to Mesopotamia. Far to the west, along the Nile, another civilization is taking shape. The ancient Egyptians harnessed the predictable flooding of the river to grow crops in abundance. Their cities shine with limestone temples and monuments carved with hieroglyphs. In the east, the Indus Valley people build cities with straight streets, advanced drainage systems, and vast warehouses. To the north, in China's river valleys, dynasties rise and fall, their rulers commanding armies and building palaces. With civilization comes trade. Goods and ideas travel along rivers, across deserts and overseas. Lapis from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, gold from Nubia. Each carries stories from lands far away. Languages mix, technologies spread, and cultural exchange begins to weave the first threads of a truly interconnected world. But civilization also brings conflict. The same walls that protect from flood and invasion also divide. Armies march to expand territory, kings compete for power, and wars leave ruins where cities once stood. The balance between creation and destruction becomes a constant rhythm in human history. In the evening light of Mesopotamia, the city glows. Smoke from cooking fires drifts into the rose-colored sky. From a palace balcony, a scribe looks out over the rooftops, holding a clay tablet covered in fresh marks. Below, the streets are alive with the voices of merchants, craftsmen and farmers returning from the fields. Somewhere in the crowd, a child runs to catch up with her mother, clutching a small clay toy in her hand. A moment of life unchanged by the sweep of history. Humanity has come far from the forests and plains of Africa. The journey from small bands of hunters to sprawling cities has taken millions of years, shaped by adaptation, innovation, and the relentless will to survive. Now, the stage is set for the next chapters. The rise of empires, the spread of ideas, and the ever-growing ambition to understand and control the world. The first light of dawn touches marble columns, turning them gold against the pale sky. In the distance, the sea glimmers, its waves carrying the scent of salt and trade. On the streets below, merchants set out their goods, olive oil, fine pottery, rolls of dyed cloth, as the hum of the city stirs awake. This is Athens, in the heart of ancient Greece, where the pursuit of knowledge and beauty has become as important as the pursuit of bread. Here the idea of democracy is born, fragile, imperfect, but revolutionary. Citizens gather in open spaces to speak, debate, and vote. Philosophers walk the shaded colonnades, questioning everything. What is justice? What is truth? What is the good life? The answers they seek will echo through the centuries, shaping the moral and political thought of the world to come. Far to the east, in the lands once ruled by the mighty Mesopotamians, new powers rise and fall. The Persians build an empire that stretches from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean, connected by roads and governed with a mix of tolerance and discipline. Their couriers ride day and night, carrying messages faster than ever before. In India, the Maurya and Gupta empires flourish, blending governance with art, science, and philosophy. Buddhist monks travel the Silk Roads, carrying their teachings across mountains and deserts, while scholars refine mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. In China, the Han dynasty rules over a vast and sophisticated civilization. The Great Wall winds across the mountains, protecting against northern invasions. Paper is invented here, transforming the way knowledge is recorded and spread. Confucian ideals shape government and family life, emphasizing harmony, respect, and duty. Then comes Rome. From a small city on the Italian peninsula, it grows into one of the greatest empires the world has ever known. Roman roads stretch for thousands of miles, aqueducts carry fresh water into crowded cities, and laws are codified to govern diverse peoples under a single banner. The Colosseum fills with spectators as gladiators fight for glory and survival, while armies march to expand Rome's borders across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Trade flourishes on an unprecedented scale. Spices from India, silk from China, gold from Africa, all move along vast networks of roads and sea routes. Ideas travel with them, religious beliefs, artistic styles, technological innovations. The world becomes more connected, and in that connection, cultures adapt and evolve. But the classical age is not only about grand empires and great thinkers, it is also an age of human struggle. Wars ravage cities, famine stalks the countryside, and disease moves swiftly along the same trade routes that carry wealth. Yet through it all, humanity's creativity and resilience never fade. In the Library of Alexandria, scrolls hold the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world, maps of distant lands, studies of the stars, works of poetry and philosophy. In a quiet corner, a scholar dips his pen in ink and begins to write, adding another voice to the chorus of human thought. At the same time, in a bustling Roman marketplace, a potter shapes wet clay on a spinning wheel, crafting a vessel that will carry oil to a distant home. In a Greek theatre, actors in masks recite lines that have been spoken for generations, their words carrying laughter, sorrow, and truth to the audience. In a small Chinese village, a farmer tends rice paddies as his ancestors have done for centuries, bound to the rhythms of earth and sky. From the great capitals to the humblest homes, life in the classical age is a blend of tradition and change, stability and transformation. The seeds planted here in governance, philosophy, science and culture will continue to grow long after these empires fade. The classical age will end as all ages do, but its influence will ripple forward into the modern world, shaping how we think, rule, and live. And when it ends, it will give way to a new chapter in humanity's journey, one of faith, discovery, and rebirth. The sun rises over a walled city, its towers and minarets catching the light, casting long shadows across cobbled streets. The air is thick with the scent of fresh bread from a baker's stall and the distant call to prayer from a mosque. Bells toll from a cathedral on the opposite side of the city. Here, in the heart of the medieval world, faith is the foundation upon which entire civilizations rest. In Europe, towering stone cathedrals take decades, even centuries to build, testaments to both human devotion and human ambition. Stained glass windows pour colored light across stone floors, telling biblical stories to congregations who cannot read. Monks and nuns labor in quiet scriptoriums, copying manuscripts by hand, preserving the knowledge of the ancient world. In the bustling streets beyond, guilds organize craftsmen, markets teem with traders, and peasants work the surrounding fields, bound to the land and the rhythms of the seasons. Farther east, the Islamic Golden Age flourishes. From Baghdad to Cordoba, scholars gather in great libraries and houses of wisdom, translating Greek, Persian, and Indian works into Arabic, and producing new breakthroughs in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Paper, introduced from China, makes books more accessible, allowing ideas to spread faster than ever before. In cities like Damascus and Samarkand, artisans weave intricate textiles, merchants trade exotic spices, and poets craft verses that will be recited for generations. In Africa, kingdoms such as Mali and Ghana grow rich from gold and salt trade, their wealth flowing along caravan routes that cross the vast Sahara. In Timbuktu, a city of scholars, vast collections of manuscripts cover topics from law to astronomy, poetry to agriculture. These centers of learning shine as brightly as any in Europe or Asia. Meanwhile, in East Asia, the Song dynasty ushers in an era of remarkable innovation. Gunpowder, the compass, and movable type printing begin to transform the world. Cities swell with life as markets brim with tea, silk, porcelain, and exotic goods brought by merchants from distant lands. Across the seas, Japanese samurai follow a strict code of honor, while in Korea, artisans produce exquisite celadon pottery and scholars refine Confucian learning. The medieval world is also an age of great movement. Pilgrims walk hundreds of miles to holy sites in Jerusalem, Mecca, Canterbury, and Santiago de Compostela. Crusaders march eastward across continents in wars of faith, bringing both destruction and unexpected cultural exchange. Merchants traveled the Silk Road, their caravans winding through deserts and mountain passes, linking China with Europe, carrying not only goods but stories, music, and knowledge. In the Americas, civilizations thrive far from Eurasia's empires. The Maya chart the stars with precision, building cities of stone in the jungles of Central America. The Inca knit together a vast network of roads through the Andes, their runners carrying messages at astonishing speed. On the plains of North America, diverse cultures live in harmony with their environments, shaping their lives around the migration of animals, the cycles of the seasons, and the sacred landscapes they call home. Yet the medieval age is not without its shadows. Famine grips entire regions, and the Black Death sweeps through cities and villages, killing millions and altering the course of history. Kingdoms rise and fall, often in blood and fire. Still, even in times of hardship, human ingenuity persists. Songs are sung, inventions are made, and art continues to flourish. From the illuminated manuscripts of Ireland to the intricate arabesques of Moorish Spain, from the carved temples of Angkor to the totem poles of the Pacific Northwest, the medieval era reveals a truth that spans all cultures. The human spirit does not merely survive, it creates, it adapts, it dreams. As the centuries pass, the medieval world begins to change. New ships sail farther than ever before. Knowledge once confined to a few begins to spread widely. A thirst for exploration and discovery awakens. Soon, the world will stand at the threshold of an age where maps will be redrawn, boundaries crossed, and the very idea of what is possible will be reimagined. The dawn of the Renaissance feels like the world taking a deep breath after centuries of routine and restraint. In the bustling city of Florence, sunlight spills across narrow stone streets as merchants haggle over bolts of silk and barrels of wine. Above them, in airy studios, artists mix pigments, their hands steady as they bring visions to life on canvas and plaster. It is here, in Italy's city-states, that ancient Greek and Roman ideas are reborn, reshaped and set free. Scholars pore over rediscovered manuscripts, architects sketch domes and arches inspired by classical ruins, and philosophers debate the nature of man, faith, and the cosmos. The focus shifts from purely divine purpose to human potential, a celebration of what people can think, build, and imagine. In a dimly lit workshop, Leonardo da Vinci hunches over a notebook, filling its pages with sketches of flying machines, human anatomy, and mechanical devices centuries ahead of their time. Nearby, Michelangelo chips away at a block of marble, revealing the figure of David, a masterpiece of form and strength. Across the continent, in a modest study, a German printer named Johannes Gutenberg refines the movable type printing press, a machine that will shatter the boundaries of knowledge by making books faster and cheaper to produce than ever before. Ideas spread like wildfire. In France, England, the Netherlands, and beyond, writers, scientists, and thinkers seize this new access to information, exchanging letters and manuscripts that travel along roads and rivers. Music flourishes in courts and cathedrals, blending old chants with intricate harmonies. Maps, once crude and filled with sea monsters, become more precise, guiding sailors into uncharted waters. The age of exploration begins not with a single journey, but with a growing hunger for spices, gold, land, and the thrill of the unknown. Portuguese caravels sail along the coast of Africa, charting new routes to the riches of the East. In 1492, Christopher Columbus, seeking a westward passage to Asia, lands instead in the Caribbean, sparking a chain of events that will connect and forever change the peoples of Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Trade winds carry ships farther than ever before. Vasco da Gama reaches India, linking Europe directly to Asian markets. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, though he himself does not survive, completes the first circumnavigation of the globe, proving that the Earth is round and vast beyond imagination. Yet this era of discovery is also an era of conquest. Indigenous peoples across the Americas face disease, enslavement, and cultural destruction at the hands of explorers and colonizers. The transatlantic slave trade begins, forging a brutal and lasting legacy of human suffering. Empires grow rich on the backs of the exploited, their palaces and cathedrals built with both wonder and tragedy woven into their stones. In the East, the Ming dynasty oversees voyages of their own. Massive treasure ships under Admiral Zheng have sailed to Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and the coast of Africa, carrying silk, porcelain, and messages of Chinese power. The Ottoman Empire dominates trade routes between Europe and Asia, its cities humming with cultural and scientific life. Back in Europe, scientific curiosity blossoms. Copernicus proposes a heliocentric model of the solar system. Galileo peers through his telescope and sees moons circling Jupiter, challenging centuries of accepted belief. Anatomists dissect the human body, painters study perspective, and explorers map coastlines once thought unreachable. The Renaissance and the age of exploration do more than expand the borders of maps. They expand the borders of the human mind. Across continents, a new truth takes hold. There is always more to learn, more to see, more to imagine. The old world is giving way to a new one, built on curiosity, creativity, and a willingness to question. Soon, the same spirit that drives artists and explorers will fuel revolutions in science, politics, and industry. The stage is set for an age where humanity will not only explore the world, but also the very laws that govern. In the quiet of an observatory, a man leans over a telescope, its polished brass glinting under lamplight. He is Galileo Galilei, and tonight, as the cool air settles over the hills of Italy, he is about to confirm something that will shake the very foundations of belief. The moons of Jupiter, tiny specks of light dancing in perfect defiance of the idea that everything revolves around Earth. This is the scientific revolution, a time when the mysteries of nature begin to yield to the careful method of observation, experimentation, and reason. It is not a sudden spark, but a chain reaction, ignited by curiosity and fanned by the growing availability of books, maps, and instruments. Nicholas Copernicus, decades earlier, had dared to suggest that the sun, not the earth, was at the center of our universe. Johannes Kepler takes this further, revealing that planets move in ellipses, not perfect circles, their paths determined by invisible forces. Isaac Newton, sitting beneath an apple tree, or so the legend goes, formulates the laws of motion and universal gravitation, binding the movements of the heavens and the fall of an apple into a single, elegant framework. In laboratories and studies across Europe, scientists dissect, measure, and record. Robert Boyle studies gases, laying the foundations of modern chemistry. Antony van Leeuwenhoek, peering through his handcrafted microscopes, discovers a world too small for the naked eye, tiny organisms swimming in a drop of water. William Harvey maps the circulation of blood, revealing the heart as a pump rather than a mystical source of life. But science is not alone in its transformation of the human mind. The Enlightenment, the age of reason, rises alongside it, carried on the pens of philosophers, political thinkers, and reformers. Parisian salons buzz with debate as men and women gather to discuss liberty, equality, and the rights of man. In coffee houses, pamphlets are read aloud, ideas traded as eagerly as the news of the day. John Locke argues that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, planting the seeds of modern democracy. Voltaire wields wit like a blade, skewering superstition and tyranny. Jean-Jacques Rousseau envisions a society guided by the general will, where freedom comes through participation in the community. Montesquieu proposes the separation of powers, an idea that will one day shape constitutions around the globe. Art and culture reflect this new spirit. Painters turn their gaze from religious icons to scenes of everyday life, landscapes, and scientific wonders. Music grows more expressive as composers like Mozart and Haydn create symphonies that seem to echo the harmony and order sought in nature itself. The printing press churns out books on astronomy, philosophy, anatomy, and politics, making knowledge a force that can no longer be locked away in libraries or palaces. Education spreads beyond the elite, and literacy becomes a passport to participation in the great debates of the age. Yet this period is not free of contradiction. While reason and liberty are championed in Europe, colonies across the Americas, Africa, and Asia remain under the grip of imperial powers. The same thinkers who preach equality often turn a blind eye to slavery and exploitation. The Enlightenment, for all its brilliance, carries the flaws of its time. Still, the momentum is unstoppable. Scientific societies form, experiments are published for peer review, and truth becomes something to be tested rather than simply accepted. In the span of a few generations, humanity's understanding of the world and its place in it shifts dramatically. The stage is now set for revolutions not only in thought but in action. In the coming century, Enlightenment ideals will spill into the streets, fueling political upheaval, the birth of nations, and the reshaping of the social order. A restless wind blows across the Atlantic in 1776, carrying with it whispers of rebellion. In the American colonies, 13 small territories stand against one of the most powerful empires on earth. Farmers, blacksmiths, and merchants take up arms, not for conquest, but for a radical idea that people can govern themselves free from kings and inherited rule. The Declaration of Independence is signed, its ink still wet as the words echo through history. All men are created equal. It is not yet a truth for all. Enslaved Africans, indigenous peoples, and women remain excluded, but the seed of democracy is planted in fertile soil. Across the ocean, these ideas stir a different kind of storm. In France, the year is 1789. Bread is scarce, the poor grow desperate, and the opulence of Versailles stands as a symbol of everything that is wrong. The Bastille falls, and with it, centuries of absolute monarchy. The French Revolution begins, unleashing ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, though not without bloodshed, chaos, and a reign of terror. Yet even in its turmoil, the revolution reshapes political thought, showing that kings can fall and nations can be remade. As these political revolutions unfold, another quieter revolution is taking place, one that will change not only governments, but the very fabric of daily life. In Britain, smoke rises from tall brick chimneys. Inside vast textile mills, machines clatter and hum, weaving cloth faster than any human hand could manage. Steam engines, fueled by coal, power trains and ships, shrinking distances and connecting markets. This is the Industrial Revolution, and it is as transformative as fire or agriculture. People leave villages for cities, trading the rhythms of the seasons for the relentless ticking of factory clocks. Iron rails stretch across the countryside. Telegraph wires hum with invisible messages, bringing news across continents in moments. Inventions multiply. James Watt's improvements to the steam engine, Eli Whitney's cotton gin, George Stephenson's locomotives. Every new innovation spawns others, each reshaping how people live, work, and interact. For the first time in history, production is no longer limited by human muscle or animal strength. Machines can work endlessly, day and night. But progress has its shadows. In the crowded streets of London and Manchester, coal smoke chokes the air. Children labour in factories, their small hands nimble but their bodies stunted. Inequality grows as industrialists grow rich while workers struggle to survive on meagre wages. Yet amidst the hardship, new movements emerge. Workers form unions, demanding fair pay and safer conditions. Reformers push for public education, sanitation, and the end of child labor. In time, governments begin to respond, slowly weaving social protections into the machinery of industrial society. The revolutions of this era, political and industrial, are deeply intertwined. Printing presses spread radical ideas. Railways carry not just goods, but political pamphlets, and reformers eager to rally the masses. The spirit of change crosses borders, inspiring uprisings in Latin America, Europe, and beyond. By the mid-19th century, humanity has entered a new chapter. Nations are being born, empires are expanding, and cities are swelling into sprawling centers of trade and culture. The pace of change is dizzying, and for the first time, many people begin to feel that history is accelerating, that tomorrow will be dramatically different from today. And they are right. The momentum of these revolutions will carry humanity into an age of science, nationalism, and global empires, a world where progress and conflict will march side by side. The 19th century dawns under the shadow of revolution, but its heart beats to a new rhythm. The rhythm of nations being born, borders being redrawn, and human ambition stretching farther than ever before. Across Europe, a new force is stirring. Nationalism. It is the belief that people who share a language, a history, and a culture should be united under one flag. In Italy, scattered states and kingdoms long under foreign rule begin to dream of unity. The figure of Giuseppe Garibaldi, with his red-shirted volunteers, becomes a symbol of determination. By 1871, after decades of struggle, Italy is one nation at last. In the heart of Central Europe, the vision is different but no less ambitious. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia, uses diplomacy and war in equal measure to unite dozens of independent German states. In the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, a symbolic blow to France, the German Empire is proclaimed. Europe's political map has changed forever. But nationalism is not only a unifying force, It can also fracture empires. The Ottoman Empire, stretched thin and weakened by internal divisions, loses territories to rising Balkan states. The Austrian Empire becomes the Austro-Hungarian Empire in a bid to hold together its diverse peoples. But the seeds of discontent are already sown. Beyond Europe, nationalism often takes a different form, not the rise of the oppressed, but the dominance of the powerful. The 19th century becomes the age of imperialism, as industrial powers seek resources, markets, and strategic advantage. Britain declares itself the workshop of the world, its navy ruling the seas. From the goldfields of South Africa to the tea plantations of India, the Union Jack waves over a quarter of the globe's population. France, Belgium, Germany, and later the United States and Japan join in the scramble for colonies. Africa is carved up at the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, with European powers drawing lines on maps without regard for the people who live there. Railroads, ports, and schools are built, but so too are systems of exploitation, forced labor, and cultural erasure. Yet imperialism is not without resistance. Leaders like Shaka Zulu, Menelik II of Ethiopia, and later Mahatma Gandhi challenged the might of empires in different ways, through military defiance, clever diplomacy, and the power of non-violence. While political borders shift, another revolution unfolds quietly but relentlessly, the scientific revolution of the 19th century. In 1859, Charles Darwin publishes On the Origin of Species, presenting the theory of evolution by natural selection. The idea shocks and fascinates the world, challenging deeply held beliefs about creation and humanity's place in nature. In physics and chemistry, figures like Michael Faraday, James Clerk Maxwell, Dmitri Mendeleev, and Louis Pasteur make breakthroughs that will transform industries and save countless lives. The germ theory of disease changes medicine forever, leading to cleaner hospitals, vaccines, and public health systems. Technology races ahead. The typewriter, the telephone, electric lighting, photography, and eventually motion pictures. These inventions shrink the world, not just physically but culturally. People can communicate faster, travel farther, and see images from across the globe in a way unimaginable just decades earlier. But with progress comes new tensions. Industrial cities grow ever larger, their factories pulling in workers from countryside and colonies alike. Class divisions sharpen. Socialist movements, inspired by the writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, demand a new economic order. Strikes, protests, and political debates fill the air. By the close of the century, the world is more connected than ever before, by steamships, telegraphs, railways, and trade. Yet it is also a world divided, between empires and the colonized, between the wealthy and the working poor, between traditional beliefs and modern science. And in the shadows, new rivalries are brewing. The alliances, arms races, and nationalist fervor of the late 19th century are setting the stage for something unprecedented, a war that will engulf the entire globe. The dawn of the 20th century is electric with optimism. Cities glow under the warm light of newly strung electric lamps. The rumble of automobiles replaces the clatter of horse-drawn carriages. Airplanes, fragile machines of wood and canvas, defy gravity, promising to erase the vastness of oceans and continents. The Belle Époque, as it's called in Europe, feels like the golden age of modernity. Art Nouveau curves wind through architecture, cafes hum with conversation, and new music, from ragtime to jazz, fills the air. Scientific breakthroughs, X-rays, quantum theory, Einstein's theory of relativity, open windows into realities once unimaginable. Humanity seems poised to conquer any challenge. But beneath the surface, the world is a powder keg. Imperial powers jostle for dominance, their colonial empires sprawling across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. In Europe, nationalism burns fiercely. Alliances form like tectonic plates, locking into place. The triple entente of France, Russia and Britain facing the triple alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. Then in the summer of 1914, a single gunshot shatters the illusion of peace. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo triggers a chain reaction of military mobilizations and declarations of war. World War I engulfs the globe. Trench warfare freezes the Western Front into a brutal stalemate, where soldiers live and die in mud-filled ditches under constant artillery fire. The modern age brings modern killing. Machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and aerial bombardment. The war stretches from Europe to Africa, the Middle East and Asia, dragging millions into its vortex. When the guns finally fall silent in 1918, the world is changed forever. Empires collapse. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires all fall. New nations emerge, their borders redrawn at the Paris Peace Conference. But the peace is fragile. The Treaty of Versailles, with its harsh terms for Germany, plants the seeds of future conflict. The 1920s roar to life. In America, jazz clubs, flapper dresses, and booming stock markets create an atmosphere of dizzying freedom. In Europe, art movements like Surrealism and Bauhaus break all the old rules. Radios carry voices across continents. Cinema transforms from novelty to art form. But the decade's exuberance hides economic fault lines. In 1929, the US stock market crashes, sending shockwaves around the globe. The Great Depression begins, and with it comes mass unemployment, hunger, and political unrest. It is in this soil of hardship and resentment that authoritarian leaders rise. Benito Mussolini in Italy, Adolf Hitler in Germany, militarists in Japan. Their promises of national revival come at the cost of freedoms, scapegoating minorities, and preparing for war. By the late 1930s, the world is once again on the brink. Germany invades. Poland in 1939, and World War II begins. This time, the scale of destruction is even greater. The Blitz rains bombs over London. The Eastern Front becomes a vast killing ground. The Pacific War stretches across island chains and oceans. The Holocaust, the mechanized extermination of millions of Jews and other targeted groups, reveals the darkest depths of human cruelty. Yet the war also brings moments of extraordinary courage and unity. The resistance movements, the D-Day landings, the endurance of cities under siege. Scientific innovation accelerates. Radar, jet engines, and in a grim culmination, the atomic bomb. In August 1945, the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan's surrender, ending the war but beginning a nuclear age that will haunt every generation after. When peace comes in 1945, the world is exhausted yet hopeful. The United Nations is formed to prevent another global catastrophe. Former colonies begin to push for independence. The United States and the Soviet Union emerge as superpowers, their rivalry shaping the decades to come in a tense standoff known as the Cold War. As the century's middle decades unfold, humanity stands on the threshold of both unimaginable peril and breathtaking possibility. The world after 1945 is a paradox, full of hope, yet shadowed by fear. Cities rebuild from rubble, economies revive, and technology promises a better life. But over it all hangs the threat of a new kind of annihilation: nuclear war. Two superpowers dominate the planet: the United States and the Soviet Union. Allies during World War II, they now stand as ideological rivals. Capitalism versus communism. Their competition will define global politics for the next half-century. The Cold War is unlike any conflict in history. There are no vast battlefronts where armies clash directly. Instead, it's a war of influence, intelligence, and intimidation. The United States and the Soviet Union race to build larger nuclear arsenals, each bomb more powerful than the last. Military alliances form: NATO in the west, the Warsaw Pact in the east. The world becomes a chessboard, with nations aligning to one side or the other. Espionage flourishes. In dimly lit rooms, spies exchange microfilms, coded messages crackle over secure lines. The CIA and KGB wage their silent war in shadows. But the Cold War is also a battle of ideas, waged through culture, science, and even sports. In 1957, the Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. The beeping sphere, small enough to fit in the back of a truck, terrifies the West and ignites the space race. Within years, both nations send astronauts into orbit, culminating in 1969 when American astronaut Neil Armstrong sets foot on the moon, declaring, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Meanwhile, the world undergoes a wave of decolonization. Across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, nations long under European rule gain independence. Leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Julius Nyerere envision new futures for their peoples. But independence often comes with economic hardship and political instability. The Cold War's tensions explode into proxy wars. Korea in the 1950s, Vietnam in the 1960s and 70s, Afghanistan in the 1980s. Here, the superpowers back opposing sides, turning local conflicts into global flashpoints. At home, societies are transformed. In America, the civil rights movement challenges racial segregation and inequality, with figures like Martin Luther King Jr. leading marches and speaking words that echo through history. In the Soviet bloc, dissent is often crushed. Uprisings in Hungary and Czechoslovakia are met with tanks. Cultural revolutions sweep the globe. The 1960s and 70s bring rock and roll, student protests, the feminist movement, and a new awareness of environmental issues. Television becomes the global storyteller, bringing images of war, protest, and celebration into living rooms. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brings the world to the brink of nuclear war. For 13 tense days, U.S. President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev face off over Soviet missiles in Cuba. In the end, diplomacy prevails, but the moment leaves an indelible scar on humanity's memory. Through it all, science and technology leap forward. Computers shrink from room-sized machines to desktop devices. Medical breakthroughs save millions of lives. Air travel becomes routine. By the 1980s, cracks begin to show in the Soviet system. Economic stagnation, political repression, and costly military commitments weaken its grip. In 1989, the Berlin Wall, the most visible symbol of the Cold War, falls. Crowds climb atop the wall, tearing it down piece by piece, celebrating a future without division. 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union dissolves. The Cold War ends not with a final battle, but with a quiet, stunning collapse. The United States emerges as the world's sole superpower. The late 20th century is a moment of transition. The old world order is gone, and a new, uncertain era begins. The Cold War's end leaves the world in flux. The Berlin Wall is gone, the Soviet Union dissolved, and the map of nations has shifted once again. For the first time in decades, the shadow of nuclear confrontation seems to fade. But a new force begins to transform humanity, not through weapons or borders, but through information. In the early 1990s, computers, once confined to government labs and corporate offices, start appearing in homes. Clunky beige towers with dial-up modems connect to a mysterious new frontier: the Internet. At first, it's slow and awkward, a patchwork of text-heavy websites and primitive chat rooms, but the promise is undeniable. For the first time in history, information can travel anywhere, instantly. Globalization accelerates. Goods, ideas, and cultures move across borders with unprecedented speed. Shipping containers and air freight carry products from factory floors in Asia to store shelves in America, Europe, and Africa. The world's economies become intertwined, a vast web of trade and dependency. In 1995, a young entrepreneur named Jeff Bezos launches Amazon from his garage, selling books online. That same year, Pierre Omidyar creates eBay. Soon, Google, Facebook, and other digital giants rise, reshaping how people shop, learn, and communicate. The 1990s are an age of optimism, the belief that technology will solve humanity's oldest problems. The Human Genome Project begins decoding the blueprint of life. Mobile phones, once symbols of wealth, shrink in size and price, connecting billions of people. Yet the new era has its shadows. As industries shift to cheaper labor markets, entire communities lose their economic lifeblood. Manufacturing towns in America, mining regions in Europe, and rural farms worldwide face decline. The promise of globalization doesn't reach everyone equally. Cultural exchange becomes constant. A teenager in Nairobi can wear the same sneakers as one in New York, listen to the same music as someone in Tokyo, and watch the same films as a student in Paris. But some fear that local traditions will fade, replaced by a uniform global culture. The digital revolution changes politics too. Governments begin to realize the power of the internet and the dangers. In some nations, it becomes a tool for surveillance and control. In others, a space for freedom and dissent. The turn of the millennium is marked by both excitement and unease. The Y2K scare, the fear that computers will crash when the year changes from 1999 to 2000, comes and goes with little more than a sigh of relief. But soon, the optimism of the 90s is shaken. On September 11, 2001, coordinated terrorist attacks strike the United States, killing thousands and sending shockwaves around the world. The age of digital globalization suddenly collides with an age of global insecurity. New wars erupt in Afghanistan and Iraq. Airports adopt strict security. Surveillance expands, justified by the promise of safety. Yet even in this turbulent era, innovation surges ahead. Broadband replaces dial-up, smartphones replace landlines, and social media becomes the new public square. The rise of YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram gives ordinary people a voice. And sometimes, that voice can change the world. By the late 2000s, the iPhone ushers in an era where the internet fits in a pocket. Information, once a privilege, becomes an expectation. News spreads in seconds. Movements rise overnight. But with connection comes division. Misinformation spreads as quickly as truth. Digital communities can unite people or isolate them into echo chambers. As the 21st century gains momentum, humanity stands on the threshold of possibilities undreamed of just a generation before, but also on the edge of challenges that no civilization has faced at such scale. The second decade of the 21st century dawns with a strange mixture of wonder and warning. Humanity has never been so connected, so informed, so capable, yet never so aware of the fragility of its world. The smartphone has become a second skin. Billions now carry a supercomputer in their pocket, capable of accessing the sum of human knowledge, capturing high-definition video, and broadcasting it to millions in an instant. Social media isn't just a pastime, it's a cultural and political force. Revolutions in North Africa and the Middle East are ignited and coordinated through tweets and Facebook posts, as in the Arab Spring of 2011. But technology's rapid growth is matched by growing unease. Artificial intelligence moves from science fiction to reality, quietly powering search engines, recommendation systems, self-driving cars, and facial recognition. The benefits are dazzling. AI diagnoses diseases faster than doctors, optimizes supply chains, and translates languages in real time. Yet beneath the excitement, a question grows. What happens when machines can think better than us? At the same time, climate change, long warned about by scientists, becomes impossible to ignore. Glaciers retreat, oceans warm, and extreme weather events disrupt lives and economies. In 2015, nearly every nation signs the Paris Agreement, pledging to limit global warming. But the race is against time, and the clock is ticking. Humanity also begins to reach beyond Earth, in ways unseen since the Apollo era. Private companies, once bystanders to space exploration, lead the charge. SpaceX lands reusable rockets. Talk of colonizing Mars moves from fantasy to engineering plans. Telescopes peer deeper into the universe, spotting Earth-like planets orbiting distant stars. Meanwhile, genetic engineering advances at a breathtaking pace. CRISPR technology allows scientists to edit DNA with precision once unimaginable, offering hope for curing genetic diseases, but also raising fears of designer babies and unintended consequences. Economic power shifts as well. China rises to become a global superpower, challenging the dominance of the United States. Global trade grows ever more complex, and new geopolitical tensions emerge. The digital world reshapes the human mind. Attention spans shrink under a constant flood of notifications. People form identities not only in physical spaces, but in online communities. For some, the digital self feels more real than the one in the mirror. Yet as the decade progresses, a global shock unites and divides humanity like never before, the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. A virus spreads across the planet in weeks, bringing cities to a standstill, grounding planes and confining billions to their homes. Hospitals overflow, economies falter, the fragility of the modern world is laid bare. But there is resilience too. Scientists develop vaccines in record time, aided by decades of research and new genetic technology. Communities find ways to adapt. From remote work to virtual classrooms to online concerts, the world learns painfully that survival is not just about tools and intelligence, but about cooperation and adaptability, the same traits that carried our species through ice ages and mass migrations. By the early 2020s, humanity stands at a crossroads. AI grows more capable, climate change more urgent, global politics more volatile. Yet we are also on the brink of discoveries that could redefine what it means to be human, from fusion energy to mind-machine interfaces to the possibility of life beyond Earth. The same species that once chipped stone into tools now manipulates atoms, decodes genomes, and engineers machines that can learn. But with great power comes a choice, to use it for survival and thriving, or to let it become the instrument of our undoing. The year is not far ahead, maybe 2050, maybe sooner. The children born today will live to see a world as different from ours as ours is from the days before the internet. The first signs of this transformation are already visible. Artificial intelligence evolves from a tool into a collaborator. No longer confined to executing instructions, advanced AI systems engage in creative problem-solving, medical research, urban planning, even art and literature. In some places, humans work side by side with AI assistants that anticipate needs, translate thoughts into action, and operate with a kind of alien efficiency. In healthcare, medicine becomes personalized at the genetic level. Instead of prescribing drugs based on population averages, doctors, or more often AI-driven diagnostic systems, design treatments tailored to an individual's DNA, lifestyle, and even gut microbiome. Diseases that plagued humanity for millennia, cancer, Alzheimer's, inherited genetic disorders, are not entirely gone, but they are no longer death sentences. Space becomes a second frontier, not just for exploration, but for habitation. By mid-century, the Moon may host permanent research colonies, and Mars, once a distant dream, could see its first generation of settlers. Vast orbital habitats, spinning gently to simulate gravity, become homes for thousands. Some humans will live their entire lives without setting foot on Earth's soil. Back on Earth, the climate crisis forces radical innovation. Coastal cities rise on floating platforms. Deserts bloom with solar farms that stretch beyond the horizon. Fusion energy, the power of the stars, becomes a reality, offering clean, virtually limitless electricity. If the last centuries were defined by the mastery of fire, this one could be defined by the mastery of the atom. Humanity also begins to blur the line between biology and technology. Brain-computer interfaces allow people to store memories externally, share thoughts instantly, or control machines with a flicker of intention. Prosthetic limbs respond as naturally as biological ones, and in some cases outperform them. The old idea of what it means to be fully human starts to shift, perhaps forever. But these advances come with deep questions. Who gets access to life-extending treatments and neural enhancements? Will the gap between the augmented and the unaugmented become a new form of inequality? Can we preserve individuality in a world where thoughts and data flow seamlessly between minds? The cultural shifts are equally profound. Nations may become less relevant as identity centers around values, virtual communities, or even shared mental networks. Languages evolve rapidly, influenced by global communication and AI-generated dialects. Art, music, and storytelling take on new forms, blending human creativity with machine imagination. And through it all, core human challenges remain. Cooperation, empathy, meaning. The same social instincts that helped small bands of hunter-gatherers survive in the Pleistocene now have to guide a species spread across planets, networks, and realities. Looking back, it becomes clear that human evolution was never just about the body. It was about the mind, its ability to imagine futures that did not yet exist and then build them. In the near future, that imagination will be tested as never before. The question is no longer, can we survive? The question becomes, what do we want to become? The story of humanity is a story of survival against impossible odds. From fragile primates trembling in the shadows of predators, to firemakers who lit the darkness, to builders of cities that touched the sky, we have been relentless. Every obstacle, every ice age, every famine, every war, none of it stopped the beating pulse of our species. We are the descendants of those who refused to give up. The hands that shaped stone tools are our hands. The eyes that stared into the flames with wonder are our eyes. The voices that first sang to the stars echo still in our songs today. And yet, our journey has never been a straight path. For every leap forward there were stumbles, civilizations that collapsed, knowledge lost to the ashes, moments when it seemed humanity might vanish into the cold silence of history. But each time, we began again. It is easy to forget how far we have come. We no longer huddle in caves, praying for the sun to rise. We can send our thoughts across oceans in an instant, reach worlds millions of kilometers away, and peer into the very fabric of the universe itself. We can save lives with a single pill, grow food from barren soil, and unlock the genetic code that made us. But perhaps the greatest lesson of our evolution is not in our technology, our empires, or even our survival. It is in our capacity to imagine. That same imagination that once painted bison on cave walls now dreams of cities on Mars. The instinct that once bound small tribes together now has the potential to unite an entire planet. Still, the question remains, what will we do with this gift? Will we use it to build a future where every human life has dignity, or will we repeat the mistakes of the past on a grander scale? Our ancestors left us more than tools and genes. They left us a challenge to take the fire they kept alive for millions of years and carry it forward. To be not just survivors, but stewards of a world we share with every living thing. When the archaeologists of the far future look back at our time, what will they see? Will they see a species that turned on itself, or one that embraced the vast potential written into its bones? Will they see the last chapter of an old story, or the first chapter of something greater? The truth is, the future is not yet written. It waits for us, for the choices we make now, for the dreams we dare to dream, for the courage to evolve not only in body and mind, but in spirit. We are the latest link in a chain that began before memory, before history, before even the first spark of fire. And if we are wise, we will not be the last. Because the story of human evolution is not over. It is still being written, by you, by me, by all of us. And somewhere, 1,000,000 years from now, our distant descendants may look back at this moment and thank us for the world we left behind.